Um, First of all, just to mention that steel is the bedrock of any nation's development. If gotten right, it has led many, many countries to their industrial revolution, and Nigeria is no exception. In fact, Nigeria is at the pericopy of something very great, where we can have both an industrial revolution and an information technology revolution at the same time. We would be the first country in Africa to go through that cycle. Mr. President, under the Renewed Hope agenda, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, under his Renewed Hope agenda, created the Ministry of Steel Development in August 2023. For the first time since our independence in 1960, a steel sector was carved out under the ministry, and is a statement of intent and a statement showing political will. Mr. President's plan is to grow the Nigerian economy to over 1 trillion US dollars by the end of the second term of his administration, by the special grace of God, in 2031. And certain measures have to be in place. If you look at the 20th biggest economy in the world right now, Switzerland, is just over 920 billion US dollars. So Mr. President has looked at the global situation and knows that if we get the steel sector right, we could become a G20 economy within 8 years. So Mr. President must be given credit. And he has continued to show that he means business for Nigeria, and he wishes Nigerians well. So if you look at some of the difficult decisions that have been taken, they are difficult decisions, but it's in the best interest of Nigeria to prevent Nigeria from a cataclysmic collapse, where we were cash-strapped for many, many years, and we didn't have the resources to pay for subsidy or to continue to liberalize our FX regime. So those changes have been put in place. Now, moving back into the steel sector, the president has given us two mandates. One is to revitalize the Ajokuta Steel Complex, as well as the National Iron Ore Mining Company, NIOMCO. The second is to revitalize the entire steel industry. So these are two big mandates. And I'll come back to your question on what we have done in the first 1 year. For lack of a better word, the low-hanging fruits to address some of the desires of Mr. President. In terms of Ajokuta and NIOMCO, we have done about 4 or 5 things. The first thing that we've done is we're in the final stages of raising 35 billion naira, around 25 million US dollars, from a local financial institution to restart the light steel mill of the Ajokuta Steel Complex. Ajokuta has about 44 production plants, sitting on about 24,000 hectares of land. If you put it in perspective, it's about the size of Abuja. So it's very, very massive. The president has given his personal approval. He gave me an approval to raise the capital locally. So we put the measures in place. We're in the final stages. I've done a cover letter to the Minister of Finance with the final offer letter from the financial institution, so that we can go through the process of securing the facility. Yesterday, at the sidelines of the commissioning of the Abuja metro rail line, I had a conversation with the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, and he's very much on board in terms of Mr. President's desire to transform the steel industry. So that's one of the things that we're doing. That is a low-hanging fruit which we're going to address within the shortest possible time. The second thing that we've done is we have drafted a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the Ministry of Defense. I have had several conversations with the Minister of State for Defense, Governor Metawale, who's in charge of DICON, Defense Industry Corporation of Nigeria, where the DICON Act was recently enacted by President Tinubu so that they can be local content. So that DICON Act ensures or stipulates that military hardwares, a large component of military hardwares must be produced locally. Ajaokuta has all the facilities to meet those objectives. So we're putting those measures in place to ensure that, whether it's helmets, whether it's bullets, whether it's vests, whether it's components for ships or cars or tanks, military tanks, all of that can be done within the confines of Ajaokuta. We have the National Methodological Development Center in Jos that has the component of lead and zinc that is a major component for production of those military hardwares that can be deployed to Ajaokuta, as well as the other mineral resources that are available in Ajaokuta to get those things done. The third thing that we're looking to do is to revive the power plant. Ajaokuta has a 110 megawatt power plant. The power plant can supply electricity and power to Ajaokuta Steel Complex, but beyond that, it can also provide some power to the national grid. Because of the paucity of finance, we're thinking outside the box to ensure that we can get a PPP arrangement where we can securitize the cash flows that will come in from selling, if the power plant is revived, the funding that we'll get from selling the power to the national grid can be securitized and used as the equity for the PPP arrangement that will bring in the capital. And we're talking to about 3 major power holding companies which are going to assist us to do that. The fourth thing that we're looking to do, which should have been number 1, is we're talking to the OEM, which is the original equipment manufacturers, which are the Russians. But not just the Russians. We have other interested parties, whether it's the Chinese or the Arabs, that have shown desire to come and help us to revive Ajaokuta, the entire complex. What is required in terms of the capital that is required is about $2 billion US, a lot of money. But the consortium that we're working with has to have a Nigerian component so that they can upscale Nigerians, their skill set, build the technical expertise, so that one day, ultimately, if we go through with the concession process, at the end of the concession arrangement, it goes back to a Nigerian entity or Nigerian entities, depending on the capacity of those Nigerian companies to be able to run it. But $2 billion US is about 3 trillion naira. Not a lot of, in fact.
At the current rate?
Yeah, at the current rate, correct. So I would say that, Nigerian companies don't have the financial muscle to be able to help us to revive it. But we can think outside the box, work with a consortium that incorporates a Nigerian entity that would help us to achieve those desires. The last thing under the first point is, under the first point of reviving Ajaokuta and Niomco is the desire to set up an industrial park within the Ajaokuta territory. Remember, I mentioned that it sits on 24,000 hectares of land. We can set up an industrial park where all the major steel players in Nigeria, but not just in Nigeria, across the West African sub-region, can coalesce in the Ajaokuta axis. We would work with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investments to create an economic zone that would have some benefits that would encourage players to come into that region. Ajaokuta has a gas pipeline from Itakpe from Warri to Ajaokuta. It has a rail line. It has facilities for deep sea port that needs to be dredged. There are mineral resources available. So everything that is required to get the steel industry to bounce back is available in Ajaokuta. And Mr. President has looked into all of this and has used his initiative and his desire to ensure that turnaround, which was the primary reason why he created the Ministry of Steel Development. Maybe I'll wait till the second section to talk about...
But